I want to welcome everybody to our second presentation. In my first study, we discussed the subject of radical feminism compared to liberal feminism. It's a question that I've asked several times in the past. And I wanted us to revisit that study or those thoughts so that we'd all be on the same page. I gave two references. One of them was from A.T. Jones. That was a sermon that he had done. And the other reference I gave was chapter 5 from the book Christ Object Lessons. We spoke a little bit about A.T. Jones' sermon. But we didn't discuss it because I think almost everybody in our group here hadn't read it previously. And we didn't get time to look at Christ Object Lessons. So if we remember from yesterday's study, I've just put that up now. Did the reference. And the title we discussed about what the gospel is and how it was compared and contrasted to the mystery of iniquity. We broke down the term radical feminist in its two parts. We looked at the word radical and we looked at the word feminist. And there were a couple of points I wanted us to see about the word radical. First of all, it does not mean extreme. It doesn't mean social reform. It doesn't mean rebellion. It means to look at the origin or the root of something. But as soon as you start looking at the root of something and try to address whatever it is that you're looking at, then number 1, 2, and 4 come into play. So that's why here we try to understand the relationship between 1, 4, and 2 as they relate to number 3. So I've been told that online they can't see my digital board. Is that nobody can see it? I can see it. So on our Zoom, we can see it. I don't know why you're unable to see it. Maybe someone can help you. Okay. So I'll carry on. Maybe the French. Okay, so we then related how we can understand the root and its relationship to 1, 4, and 2. This person is considered extremely rebellious because they want to make social reforms. Any questions on that point? Okay, then we looked at the word feminist. And as you can see on the board, we looked at the term or the phrase Black Lives Matter. And obviously in the phrase, this last bit isn't mentioned. But that's what it means. So why have the lives of white people been cancelled or not included in the title of that movement? Victoria, because they're making a statement. And what's the statement that they're making?
That their lives are just
Go ahead.
that their lives are just as important as white lives.
That their lives are just important as the lives of white people. So just to summarize again, this movement, if we can call them that, are making a statement that society or the world, the way societies operate all across this globe, understand that the lives of white people matter. That's how the social fabric, almost whatever country you go to, understands. So they don't need to make that statement. And what they're trying to say is the lives, it says black, but people of color matter as well. Any questions on that? No. So we looked at Black Lives Matter as a parable or an example of the word feminist or feminism. So we know the word black is has a racist connotation to it, just as the word feminine has a gendered context to it. So what does the word feminist mean, or why is it used that way? Why use a gendered term? Anybody? Besides Victoria? Christy?
Because the world already knows that men already matter. And so that they're just trying to say that women matter just as much.
Good. It's because society, the world, already understands that the lives of men matter. Everybody understands that's how society works and operates. And so the statement is saying that the lives of women matter as well. So we spoke about the difference between the term radical and liberal. We considered 3 questions. When we're going to look at both of them and try to understand the differences and the similarities. And what's the objective for these 2 movements? Can you remind me of your name? Sorry. Zach. So their objective is to push equality or promote equality, that everybody is equal. Good. Anybody else? Eva?
You're both for social reform.
So they're both for social reform. It has a 2 next to those 2 terms. Because that's right here, that's one of the definitions that we got for what radical meant. Someone said it was social reform. So I just borrowed that term. Both had the same objective, social reform. So the question is, how do they have or initiate or promulgate social reform? We asked 3 questions: how, the degree, and why. I said why isn't a very good question, because the reasons would be the same. Why do these movements want reform? Anybody? Christine?
Because they weren't being treated equally with men. They weren't being seen as just as important.
Both groups want social reform because they feel they're not being treated equally or the same as men. It's because both movements are what? They're both feminists. So we didn't put feminist here, but because they're both feminists, their objective or why they want social reform has to be the same. So we looked at question 1. How do they implement social reform? We looked at liberal feminists. And collectively, you told me that they work within the system. What's another word for system? Gloria?
Institution.
Institutions. And then we asked the second question, the degree. The degree of,
Change.
keep to the same terms. It's on the board. What do they want? So it's the degree of social reform. And we came to the conclusion that if you're a liberal feminist, it's limited or incremental. Alyssa, what does incremental mean?
Little bit by little bit.
Little small steps, going from 0 maybe to whatever number that they think that they can achieve. Can a liberal feminist ever achieve 100%? So several people just said no, except for Zach. Zach says yes, they can.
You're saying that radical and liberal are the same, both work within the system and they're both limited.
No, I'm not saying that, at least not yet. But are you saying that? So the question's been asked, am I saying something about liberal and radical feminism? I am saying something about them, or I want us to see something about them. Is it Sarah? Your name, sorry. So Sarah said that I already have a conclusion of what I think they are or what they can achieve. And I said, I'm not ready to reveal my cards, if you want to say it that way. And what are you saying, Sarah? So Sarah's saying both work within the system. Francisco?
Back to your question about achieving 100%. It's possible.
So my question was, can liberal feminists achieve 100% social change? And Francisco has said,
It's possible.
1 second.
It's possible, but not likely.
So Francisco said, theoretically it's possible, but it's unlikely to happen. See what then?
Yes, that's what I was gonna say too. It's theoretically, it's possible. It'll take a long time, so not.
So Sue Ellen said the same as Francisco, theoretically it's possible, but it'll take so long it's unlikely to ever happen. Claudia?
Depending what 100% is the goal, you can achieve and you can reach 100%, but depending on what is the goal, it's incremental and could be 100% of what.
So when Claudia says, when I use the term 100%, it depends what we're going to define as that number to. We'll try to address that. Emmanuel? I thought you had your hand up.
I was going to say, it's possible for the liberal feminism to achieve that, but it's a non-chat.
So Emmanuel, I think has said the same as others. So we asked the degree of what?
Social reform.
Of social reform. And people have said it's limited, which means you won't get full or equal social reform. It won't happen. That's what limited means. Incremental means that you will make small changes and then you'll get better. You'll get more change over time. And what's the objective? Claudia, what do you think the objective is? Because you said it depends what it is. What do you think it is?
For example, voting.
If we go back to the original definitions here, what's the objective of a feminist? Just the word feminist. Go ahead.
Dismantle patriarchy.
So Claudio says dismantle patriarchy. So what does the term Black Lives Matter mean? Does it mean dismantle the power that white people have? Is that what Black Lives Matter mean? Yeah, go ahead.
They want to make the point that the white look at them as important, as a problem. There is a problem there.
So Claudio said, when we look at Black Lives Matter, what that movement wants to achieve is that both Black people and especially white people understand that the lives of people of color matter. And when we transfer that idea to feminism, a feminist wants to live in a society where they are seen as equal to men. That their lives matter as much as the lives of men. Put your hands up if you think that means that they should be treated exactly the same as men. The hands are slowly going up. Do feminists want to be treated exactly the same as men? No? Put your hands up if it's no. You put your hands up twice, Gloria. Okay, so about half the class put their hands up. Yes, they should be treated exactly the same. And 2 people said no. Are you asking a question, Victoria, or in a second? So the reason why I'm asking these questions is because when we go here and I said 100%, if 100% here, where it says 100%. 100% means 100% social reform. And the social reform that they desire is that they want to be seen as the same as men. They want their lives to be seen as of equal value or equal worth as the lives of men. That would be 100%. And when Claudio asked about, it depends what the 100% is referring to, that would be the incremental bit. So equal rights under the law. Only for US citizens. That's 100% achieved. It's an incremental step. Equal voting rights, 100% achieved, incremental step. So that's why I asked, do we think we'll ever achieve true social reform, true equality, true equal value? If you're a liberal feminist. Victoria.
I was just gonna comment that they're addressing privilege, so like white privilege but now that you've spoken, I'm kind of like, but that's like a private group is addressing the privilege that, others have. They want the same rights, basically. But that's kind of been addressed.
So Victoria has used the word privilege. Then she used the word rights. And whilst they're related, I'm not sure that they're the same. Victoria, which do you think is hardest to get? Rights or privilege? Just tell me which is the harder of the two.
I think they're both hard because
One second. Okay, you think they're both hard. Which is harder, or they're the same?
the process is different, but they're the same.
When I put my hand up, that means don't speak. Go ahead.
Process is the same as in difficulty, but I think that they're both like the same as like, I mean, they're, I forgot what I was gonna say, sorry.
Let me ask a simple question, Victoria. As a person of color, do you have equal right under the law to vote as a white person?
Yeah,
When it comes to the subject of voting, do you think you still are afforded the same privileges?
no,
And Victoria has said no. How old is your right to vote? How old is that? Anybody? Just shout out the year, how many years?
105.
105 years you've been allowed to vote. You had a right. And 105 years later, what's your observation? What's your experience, Victoria?
that, well, for me, speaking, oh,
I'm going to answer. It's a rhetorical question. Is that you still don't have the same privileges as white people. So I think the bar to achieve the same privileges is much harder, much higher than it is to get a right. And Zach agrees. It's I'm not diminishing the difficulty, but it's pretty easy to get rights. But getting privilege, that's much harder, I think. And part of the problem, if we want to just go back to Sarah's point, if you're white, what don't you understand? What don't you see? Christy.
You don't see the privilege, is it just, you don't see it.
So if you're a white person, you don't see the privilege. And what do you say to all the complaints that these black people have? Zach, what do you say to all the black people? Got to speak louder.
Complaints aren't real.
Their complaints aren't real. Because there's a number on the board. Isabel?
because you have had the rights for 105 years.
You've already got the rights. What are you complaining about? So the problem with liberal feminism, which is why I think some people said, yes, they can get 100%, is that it's relatively easy to get rights. If people are diligent and when rats, we all know that. The Democrats are the most lazy party in the world. They really are. A couple of years ago, I think I did 1 or 2 presentations on the American political system in basic terms. And you have this unique phenomenon here called supermajorities. And the ultimate supermajority is what? Someone say something?
3 branches.
When you have all 3 branches, or you control all 3 branches, the 2 houses and the executive branch. And if you look back over the last, say, 100 years, you'd be surprised how many times the Democrats get that. It's pretty rare for the Republican Party to get supermajority in all 3. And every time the Democrats have got that supermajority, they've never pushed their policies through in a way that they could have done if they wanted to. Why do you think that is? Claudia?
Capitalism.
So Claudio blames capitalism. Francisco?
Got a lot of underhanded PAC money that's going into Congress that sways laws certain ways.
So,
But
so Francisco says the reason is there's a lot of black money or bribery that goes on. Zach, you say speak loud? Sorry? Okay. Alyssa? They don't want to be like the Republicans. Can I say something controversial? It's full of white people, the Democrat Party. And if it's full of white people, what don't they understand? They don't understand privilege. So they don't push through the reforms in the way that they should and could do. If it was full of black women, from the top to the bottom in those 3 houses or branches, when I say branches, I mean the 2 houses and the executive branch. I don't mean the Supreme Court. things would be different. Victoria?
Make a quick comment that, when I was speaking about like, I agree, but I was just saying about like sometimes in getting a law to go through, it takes a long time, and even after a law is passed, like in prior history, it takes a long time for that to even be enacted or, allowed.
So Victoria was making the point that actually getting your rights, which means writing, drafting, and putting laws into place, does take a long time. I recognize that. So I just want to move on. We went to radical feminism and we asked the first question, how? How what? How do you achieve social reform? And when we got to that point, we had a lot of words, as you can see, but most of them all mean the same thing. They're synonyms. And a fair few of them were just synonyms of the concept of social reform or the phrase social reform. They were just synonyms of that. Someone said outside. Don't remember who that was. If you remember, put your hand up. Lily. So Lily said radical feminists will work outside of, we'll call it society or the system. If you go back to liberal feminism and how it says work within the system, so radicals work outside of the system. Is that correct, Lily? Yes or no? Yeah. Okay. If you were, let's not use the word system, let's use the word institutions. And if we said the three branches, executive, judicial, legislative, is that the system? Is there anything outside of that system? Have I missed something? So no one's put their hand up. So I think everybody agrees that that's the system. I'll put it as a pie chart. Executive, legislative, judicial. Is that 100% of the system or the institutions, or have I missed something? So people who are putting their hand up, they're going to tell me what I've missed. Christine, your hand up?
That includes the local or just the federal?
So the question was, does this include the federal system or the state system or both? I'll put it simply. the bosses from the states all live where? In our little chart. Where do they live?
The legislative, but
So all the states are here. So that's model 1. And model 2 is each of the states have identical patterns. Alyssa, what have I missed? I don't know what that is.
People's interactions one to another, the privileges, the.
People's interactions are not an institution, I don't believe. Llewellyn?
well. I was gonna say, technically, we've had civil rights since the sixties at federal level with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. But it's not implemented at the local level necessarily.
Okay. But it's still within this system. So Llewellyn spoke about civil rights. I'm saying civil rights still fit within this system.
And I would call that other thing, I would call that corruption.
If it doesn't fit within the system, it's not a right.
Oh, it's within the system, it's written down in the law.
Then it's in the system. If it's in the system, it's your right. Okay.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that you said that the judicial wasn't included in this.
So earlier, when I was speaking about the two branches of the legislature and the executive branch, I was making one statement. And now I'm just speaking about another model, the traditional model, which is the three branches of government. Okay, so the point I want us to see, when Lily said to work outside of the system, well, hold that thought.
Family and school.
So the education system is within one of these branches. Pretty sure of that. And families, if we're going to use that in the term of marriage, also comes under one of these branches. It's an institution. And I don't mean a religious institution, I mean legally. If we're talking about human relationships, which is what Alyssa said a few moments ago, that's not an institution. I want us to see that there's a difference between the two. Because I think that becomes important later on when people have already said it here, either in class or out of class. When we were speaking yesterday about these changes of how radical feminism does things, several people said the following: I let my light shine. That's a biblical term of what people said. They didn't use that phrase. I'm using it. You can let your light shine all you like, and it's good. But what will it not do? If you follow through with what you have already laid out on the board, because these are your thoughts, not mine.
Change law.
It will not achieve, Claudio.
I'm thinking about whoever said outside, maybe was thinking about heavenly government. I don't know.
Okay.
That's my thinking. You know, the great controversy.
What will it not achieve? Letting our light shine, Isabel.
100%.
So Isabel said it won't produce 100% change. Anyone else? Zach?
It really won't change people's minds.
So Zach said it won't change anything. So you're at zero. You won't even forget 100. You're at zero. Letting your light shine produces zero social change. He said, not me. Clear. Okay. Any questions? Christine.
The Black Panthers created their own schools and their own food systems to help people. Was that outside the system or was that inside the system?
So when, don't know what to call them, something, when people get together and do funny things, someone has to work out, which would end up being a lawyer, whether it's legal or illegal. If it fits within the legal framework, they're okay. If it doesn't, it's illegal. And then the institutions decide what they will do about it. So it may or may not be outside of the system. Susan?
Well, I think there's kind of a confusion, but I think I was confused and maybe there are others are too about social reform, meaning laws under the law. And social reform meaning how do we really act with it between each other.
So
the application.
Suellen said maybe there's a misunderstanding between us as a group of what social reform means. Does it mean changing institutions, or does it mean how we behave one towards another? So let me ask a question. This is a little bit of a sidetrack. Who's this? Not me. Why have I put Paul there? We'll give two stories. According to the Bible, which was written by his best friend, whose name was Luke. What did Paul do when he went to town?
Preach the gospel.
Not preach the gospel,
Persecute.
not persecute.
Work at the tent. Work at the tent maker. Don't go and make stuff like.
Not making tents. Zach?
Not sure, no,
Can't hear?
I'm not sure.
Okay, I thought you. Okay, I think it says turned. He turned the world upside down. So that's the biblical version. What does the world mean? Israel?
Well, Paul was going outside, so he went to the Gentiles.
So does the world mean Gentiles? Anyone else?
The system?
The system. It's not the planet. It's the system. And what is the system? We call that system what? Pagan Rome. Did he change pagan Rome? No. When he came, sorry, before he came, when he came, and when he left the town, there was no change to the institutions. Society doesn't change. When they went to the farmer's market, they didn't stop selling what? They didn't stop selling bad meat. All he achieved is he turned a few people this is the worldly version, this one, the world story. And this one is the Bible story written by his best friend. We might call it cronyism, perhaps. Favoritism. They don't know what cronyism means. Okay, so what I want to show here, if you read the Bible, it infers that Paul initiated or instituted social reform. The fabric of society collapsed and he gave them a new one. I think we all agree that he didn't. And so, to me, that's an example of how we speak about personal influence and societal changes and the differences between the two. I'm not saying we shouldn't have a personal influence, and I'm not saying it doesn't make any difference. It does. Let me go back to this point. If you work within the system, that means you work within this institution, tree form of government. What does outside mean? That outside means it means outside of the government, outside of the institutions. Anyone else? So I'm going to say this is the legal framework of how the country operates. Do we agree with that? Did Paul work within the system or outside of the system? Inside. Within. Outside of the system. So lots of people have said Paul worked outside of the system. We're running out of time, so I'm just going to say that's the wrong answer. When Paul gets into trouble, what does he do? He sucks up to the system. Sucks up means he goes to the system. Any trouble, what does he pull out? His Roman passport. He's not one of those. He doesn't say, you can't touch me. You don't have jurisdiction. I'm an ambassador from heaven. We could go example after example, and we could see that he worked within the system. And only a few moments ago, several of you said Paul was a... What did you say Paul was? Is someone going to shout it out? Radical. Is Paul a radical? Apparently not. Turns out he's pretty conventional. If you're still not persuaded, just go to first. Which book? 1 Corinthians. You have to go to 1 Corinthians. First Corinthians chapter 11. What does he say? We'll go with Manuel's answer. Obey the authorities. Have I got the right chapter? Speak louder. No, it's in 1 Corinthians. Sure. Okay, I'm going to have to check. I know we're out of time, but now I'm panicking. Yeah, 1 Corinthians 11. What's he talking about that we all love to listen to? Women's hair. Why is he having a conversation about women's hair? Because he's a real radical, isn't he? He says, we don't want to be outside of society. We want to fit into the social norms, so don't mess around with your hair. We'll go to another story. I, Paul, know that men, women, and you've got to shout out loud if you're going to shout. Men, women, and not children. He doesn't care about children. Men, women, slaves are what? Equal. He says, I know you're all equal, but let's keep slavery going. Submit to your real master. And women, watch your hair. What would your neighbors think? And if you go to the market, go really early or really late so no one's looking. And they're all markers of people who are radical, I guess. Not, of course. Paul is not a radical. So, if you're going to work outside of the system, you have to do illegal things. They can't see you. They don't know your names. Put your hands up if you're prepared to do illegal things. Okay, we have one minor, so Zach says he's going to. We'll do that one. Sorry. That's not his real name. 2 people said they're prepared to do illegal things. 3 people. 4. So there's 4 people who said they're prepared to do illegal things. And all the rest of the people who are law-abiding citizens, which is a movie, trivia, they're all saying to you folks, you're going against the Bible. That's what you're saying, isn't it? Because what's the instruction? Obey who? Obey the authorities. And you're saying we're not going to. So you can see immediately there's a tension if you're going to work outside of the system. We're over time, so I'm going to stop there. When we come back, I'm not going to summarize. We're going to go straight to this question about how radical feminists are going to achieve social reform? One, two, three. How radicals achieve social reform? We need to know that because we're all radicals, apparently. Let's pray. Holy God, we thank you for your watch care and your blessings over us. As we try to understand your will for us, as we begin to explore our rights, and more importantly, our personal individual privileges, whether it's color, age, gender, or nationality. Help us to meditate upon who and what we are, so that we can achieve change in our own lives. And as we have been advised by you, that we can help influence and change the lives of others. In Jesus' name, amen.